people are your most important thing that you have in your company. And we are not particularly, an intellectual property heavy company or a fixed asset heavy company. So our competitive advantage isn't a bunch of computer code or a bunch of really expensive machinery. Our competitive advantage is the 3,000 people that we have across the country that serve our customer in their community on the daily. I think that was probably something that our board was liking and wanting to invest in.
Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leaders Show. And today I'm very happy to have with me Iggy Domagalski. Iggy is the president and CEO of Wajax, one of the Canada's longest standing and most diversified industrial providers and service providers. Prior to joining Wajax, he was the CEO of Tundra Process Solutions, a leading Western Canadian supplier of industrial process equipment. And before that, he started his career in finance at Investors Group and Richardson GMP in Winnipeg, and later became president of Western Industrial, an air compressor manufacturer in Vancouver. Iggy is also an avid community fundraiser and has served on the board of the Learning Disabilities Association, the International Society of Automation, and the Kids Cancer Care Foundation. Iggy holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the Asper School of Business, where there is an award in his name that was created by his fellow students and has given away annually since 2004. He has been named one of the Canada Top 40 Under 40, so congratulations, Iggy, and one of Canada's 50 most inspirational entrepreneurs. He lives in Calgary, Alberta, with his wife and two daughters. That's great, Iggy. Such a good start.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. Thrilled to join you.
Yeah, fantastic. And actually, your success, your awards as well, probably show us that there is something to discuss with you today and see how you can inspire the audience and maybe follow in the same success that you have achieved so far. One of the things, Iggy, that it's quite interesting from your profile that you have been CEO of Tundra Process Solutions for 4 or 5 years, is that right?
Yeah, I was a CEO there for around 6 or 7 years, and then prior to that, I was our chief operating officer at that company.
Yeah, and I mean, you move up the ranks, and what is maybe one lessons that you learned from the last 4 or 5 years as a CEO? Before talking about your current role, but how did you get a CEO in Wajax? What do you think was a major reason why you have been successful to become a CEO?
Sure. Well, let's maybe I can rewind a little bit. In my time as chief operating officer at Tundra, those were really, really fun years. A mentor of mine who became my business partner, we bought some companies in Western Canada, and we started doing that about 15 years ago. We were fortunate to be a part of about a dozen acquisitions, many of which we kind of folded together into a few larger companies. And then we were also part of about a dozen startups, which was very exciting too. And so those years were very fun, very aggressive growth. We grew the company organically at a rate of around 30% a year for over 10 years. So that was it was a quick growth rate, and that was just a ton of fun. And as a chief operating officer, my sole job was basically just to keep the train on the tracks. And when you're growing that fast, just a lot of things need to happen in the background for the company to continue to be successful. And we were a small business when we started, so even things like implementing an enterprise level ERP system and a customer relationship management system and HR systems and all of those things, we didn't have any of those when we started. So it was just really fun, exciting, fast growth. And because it was so fast growth, it was really fast learning. And so I learned a ton during those years. And then there came a time when my business partner, he was the chairman and CEO of the company, and he wanted to start pulling back a little bit and only be the chairman. And so me and him talked about me succeeding him in the role, and it worked out. And I think it was maybe one of the reasons was we had worked together for so long, so there was a level of comfort, but also just the next evolution of the company. And that evolution was really more around people and culture, and really investing in our people, making it a place that people really wanted to come to work, where they felt valued, and felt that we were doing something good. So we increased our community engagement, increased our brand story, just to make people really proud to be a part of what was, a pretty small company still. But whenever I would talk to, marketing and branding folks and just people in the community and in the business world, they always told us that we seemed to punch a little bit above our weight class in terms of brand and what we were doing out in the world. So I think because of that strong brand that we were able to create as a team, we would get calls all the time for people wanting to buy us. It's kind of the nature of being a privately owned company. You have strategics and private equity folks always kind of knocking at your door. And then the pandemic came. And a couple months into the pandemic, I get a call from somebody wanting to do the same thing. And it was the president of a company called Wajax, which is a very proud Canadian company, been around over 160 years. We knew of them. They were in our industry. And they thought, well, the pandemic might be a weird time, but maybe something good can come out of a weird time. And he told me that we've been looking at you from afar for 5 years, and maybe now might be a good time to do something. So I spoke with my partner, who was the majority shareholder of the company. He was now wanting to take the next step away. He was chairman and CEO 6 years before. Then he was chairman for a while, and now he wanted to take another step back. And he had a lot of other interests and philanthropic things that he wanted to do. So we thought this might be a good time. So we sold the company and to Wajax, and so now I was reporting to my predecessor, the president of Wajax. We got along great. We got to know each other really well, and I think he appreciated some of the things that we had built at Tundra. Thought some of those could be useful at Wajax, and I kind of thought the same way. Wajax it's a wonderful company that's been around. We are in our 164th year of business, so we're actually 9 years older than our country, Canada, which is crazy. Which is kind of neat. But despite that, we don't have a stated purpose, mission, or vision, or a written down set of core values. And we've been slowly starting on a journey to be a little bit more people first company, but we're just in the infancy of that. And those are things that I'm really passionate about: building a strong brand, strong community presence, investing in our people, and making it a place where people really want to be a part of. And so I thought, if I could have the chance to do that all over again, just at a little bit of a bigger company, that would be really exciting. And the board seemed to agree, and my predecessor, president of the company, seemed to agree. So I went through the whole process to be considered for this role, and that's how I got here. So I guess to answer your question, how do I think I got here? I think it really has to do with the belief that people are your most important thing that you have in your company. Mm. And we are not particularly, an intellectual property heavy company or a fixed asset heavy company. So our competitive advantage isn't a bunch of computer code or a bunch of really expensive machinery. Our competitive advantage is the 3,000 people that we have across the country that serve our customer in their community on the daily. So I think that was probably something that our board was liking and wanting to invest in. And I just believe that, that you do that because it's the right thing to do, but it also drives pretty good business results. I mean, what company wouldn't do better if their people, really believed in the company and wanted to do their best for the company and really wanted to be at work? What company wouldn't do better in that circumstance? Yes. So I think that's that's how I got to this role, and it's been a really fun change and an interesting change. Tundra was more of a mid-sized company with about 150 people, and Wajax is 3,000 people, so it's 20 times bigger. So it's a very different way of leading. And within the previous business, I knew everyone. I had hired most of them, and I knew their spouses, and I knew some of their kids, and so if you wanted to ever convey a message, you would just walk down the hall and tell them and have a conversation about it. And that's now different. There's many people in our company that I know that I'll probably never meet. Just because they're in a far off location that I might not get the chance to get to, although I'm trying. So it's a different way of leading, and a really interesting. It's been the most the most amount of learning I've ever had in my career was in the last year, as I stepped into this new role as president of Wajax.
Yeah, and that's actually amazing how you describe your journey and get to the point where you are right now. And I have actually a question about people and how has changed your leadership approach. But before getting there to that, Iggy, I have a question about you. You said before, our company, the Wajax, and I apologize, I mispronounced that at the beginning, is not much about IP, doesn't have a specific technology, innovator product, innovation solution. It's really more about people. So it's really the core of the business. And I suppose that has been in the market for so many years, as you described. So there is something very good in a company. But it's not really about the technology, the product, or a specific solution, right? That's my understanding. So how did you... Actually, let me put it another way. What really makes a difference in the market in terms of value that Wajax does comparing to other players that are probably operating in a similar space? Is the size of organization, is the service that you provide, the quality of people? So, if we need to select one element that makes, Wajax different than others in the market, what that could be?
That's a great question. I really do think it's the people, and I'll just elaborate on that a little bit more. So we've got over 100 branches across Canada, in every major community, and a lot of small communities. And a lot of those folks have been with our company for a long time. I've met people who have been with our company for 50 years, some 45 years, 35 years. Like those are normal numbers to hear about when I visit those branches. And I've been to 75 of our branches and visited the people there over the last year, which was a lot of travel, but I think really worthwhile. I really wanted to see the business for myself. And the common factor that I've found is the people in our branches just really, really care about solving our customers' problems. And I think all the words in that sentence are important. I mean, they care, which is very, very important, and about solving their problems. There's a lot of companies who are distributors, and we're a distributor. We sell industrial equipment. So we have a heavy equipment business where we sell excavators and forklifts and engines, and then we have an industrial products and services business where we would sell all the widgets that would go into a facility. So if you can imagine a bearing or a hydraulic cylinder or a motor, we can supply and service all of that gear. And so we're a distributor and a servicer of other people's products. So we don't even have our own products that we sell. It's others that we sell. And but our people are just so darn knowledgeable. They really know the product inside and out, and they really care about solving our customers' problems. So when a customer calls in, if they don't have the part number, that is okay. And I know that at some of our competitors, they're more box movers. They're high volume. What's the part number? How many would you like? And I'll send it to you. Whereas our competitive advantage is we're more technical experts in the products, and we also have the service capability to work on pretty much everything that we sell. So I think it all does come down to the people, but it's the people who truly care about our customers and have the ability to solve their technical problems and not just say, okay, what's the part number? So I think that's why we've been successful. That's why we've made it through every economic cycle that the world can throw at us, and a couple of world wars. So yeah, I think it's the people and their desire to do good for our team.
Yeah, wonderful. Now back to what I was thinking is you said, I was a CEO before of a much smaller organization. Now I get to lead 3,000 people across Canada with a different location, etc. How have you adapted or changed your leadership approach from leading a smaller team to a larger team? Because I suppose the challenges that you face every single day are different than what you faced before, regardless the type of business. It's just, size matters. That's probably one of the major difference, I suppose, from what you just described. If that's the major challenge that you're facing right now, so that's the first question. The second question is more, what other challenges you see now leading a very different type of organization?
Sure. That's yeah, great question. Thank you. For me, I think there's two main things that are quite new. The first one is just the size, and as I was alluding to a little bit before, I can't just if I saw a problem in my previous business, um, you just kind of had a gut feel for what was going on. You know, if there was a group of people who were causing a commotion about whatever, you know, whether it was a workplace culture issue, a compensation issue, a teamwork issue, a product issue, whatever it was, you kind of had a pretty good gut feel for it, and you could just go over there, have a conversation, and figure out some kind of solution.
Mm.
Now I don't have that. I mean, first of all, it's a brand new company. I was at my previous company for almost 15 years. Now I'm brand new here, so I just don't have that institutional knowledge, and I just can't. There's just too many people to be able to know that these three people are really having an issue. So I think I really have to I've evolved my trusting of leaders, and I always did trust our leaders, and I thought that our our culture at Tundra was quite good at delegating authority and allowing the leaders to do what they needed to do. But you would still, as the CEO of that company, I would still know what was going on in most of the parts of the company.
Yes.
Here it's really full trust, given the full trust to the leaders, and saying, go, you go solve it, and I probably don't even need to know about it, and probably never will know about it. So that's been different. And then also I find getting messages truly down to our front lines is a bit of a challenge. We have a group of about 30 top leaders in our company. Communicating with them is fairly easy. Most of them I have on my calling list, so I'll call them once a month and just catch up. And then we have a monthly meeting where everyone reports on what they're doing. But there's a group of about 400 people leaders that report to those people, and they're the ones that manage the front line. So a normal example of one of our frontline leaders would be a service manager, which I think is probably the most challenging job in the company. And they might manage a crew of 5 or 7 or 10 field technicians. That's a hard job, and getting whatever message I have to convey to those technicians, I have to do it through that service manager. And communicating with that group of 400 people, I found to be the biggest challenge. Is how do you get messages to them clearly and on a consistent basis without chewing up too much of their time, because they're very busy people. So I think that's been the challenge, is communicating all the way down to the front lines. And then the other challenge, which I've encountered, is there's more stakeholders at this company. So at my previous company, it was a very mid-level kind of company. There was myself and a chairman of our board, and we didn't really even have a board. He was the sole director, major shareholder. So I really had one main stakeholder, and we talked all the time. So if we had a decision to make or something to do, I'd call him up, we'd talk about it, we'd say we'd do it, and we would just do it. Now Wajax is a publicly traded company, so there's just more stakeholders. So we have a board of directors, all of whom are new to me, who I'm getting to know and who are wonderful, but it's still 8 new personalities. We have investors, and we don't have a single tenant investor that owns a big chunk. It's all a bunch of smaller ones, so getting to know them. And then we also have bankers, and we also have analysts who cover our company and write about our company. So there's 4 of those folks. So I kind of went from having one stakeholder to about 20. And I think that the term that I read most recently was something about the CEO's role being the intersection of contradiction, which I thought was interesting. The intersection of contradiction, because everyone's got an opinion and everyone's got a legitimate stake, right? Like your directors, they have a stake. The analysts, they have a stake. Your investors, they have a stake. And so how do you manage all of those sometimes completely polar opposite perspectives and demands? So I didn't have that before. So those are the 2 main buckets of challenges I think that I've been experiencing, that I'm really enjoying tackling, but the answer is not easy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I appreciate also the openness, because these are challenges. They are not easy to solve, and understand that you're working anyway very hard on dealing with that challenges. I would like to go back to some of them, because I think it's interesting. You mentioned before that you need to have a level of trust that you don't, I mean, you always need trust, of course, in an organization, but before was much easier to build trust based on the personal relation that you have with your people. Now there is a leap of faith, right? So you need to start trusting people, even if you don't know them personally, because that's the situation where you are on. What has been maybe your learning about trust? So, we normally trust more people when we get to know them. We establish a relationship, and then we know whether, we give trust or not giving trust to people. But when you face a much larger group of people, and there is no other way than trusting and see, what they're capable of and what they can do with that. What has been your learning about trust in your first year of being a CEO of Wajax?
So when I was first interviewing for this role, it was a lengthy process. So whenever a board of directors is hiring for a CEO of a publicly traded company, they usually go through. It's a pretty rigorous process. It's just how it's done. And so they hired an outside firm to do a really, really deep analysis on me. And I was excited to do that because I'm a sucker for personal and professional development. I love doing it, and so I try to really live that. At our previous company, learning matters was a core value, and we're starting to really do more of that at Wajax now too. That I've had some time here. So I had this opportunity to go through what essentially was described to me as the most detailed, deepest 360 you've ever had. And so the company that they hired, they actually put 3 people onto the file to interview for this role, and there was me and a bunch of other candidates that were going for the role. And one of them was a psychologist, and all of them had been doing it for 30 years, and their whole job is, getting into the head of CEOs and CFOs. That's all they do. So I remember my first interview with these folks. There was me and 3 of them, and the interview was 4 hours, and like they're like psychologists. So,
yes.
So you realize that you can't hide. You can bob and weave for 30 minutes maybe, but you can't hide for 4 hours. So I laid it all out on the line, gave them all the information. I also did a lot of psychometrics tests, so the kind of the online tests where you click on what would you do in this situation, and then it gives you a bunch of reports back, and then they download those reports to you and ask you more questions about the reports. And so they did a really good profile on me, and they promised that they would share that with the board, and regardless of the result of the competition for the role, that they would share that with me. And I was really happy to be able to do that. I was really fortunate that I got a chance to go through a process like that. So they did. So they shared everything with me, and I was excited, to learn about some blind spots that I might have. And one of the things that came out, which I'd never explicitly been told or thought about, was that I lead with trust more than most. Like I'm kind of on the the 99th percentile, or however you want to measure it, of trusting. And so and then as I thought about that, I realized that was true. And so I lead with trust, and I tend to give trust before it's earned, which leads me to, typically I'll give people more chances, maybe more chances than deserved, but that's my nature. And also I start by giving trust, and now it's on you to keep that trust, but I'll give it to you first. But if you ruin it, then it's gone.
Yes.
But I usually tend to give a few chances before it's fully gone. So that's how I approach trust. I think that's how I've always been. So trust first, give the people the benefit of the doubt, allow them, give them all the rope that they need, hopefully not to hang themselves, but give them the freedom to do what they need to do. And it's worked for me. I've found that I've not been burned too many times by that. I think some people might try to take advantage of that a little bit, but in general, I think it's just worked for me and my personality.
That's very interesting. Now, here's the challenge. Some trust, you can, as a CEO, just the fact that you are giving trust to people, it speaks highly about you. And I think for me, it's an incredible way of being and showing, your leadership. The question is, sometimes in very old style organization, or very, people that have been always working in the same organization for many years, they tend to, I'm not saying that is Wajax by all means, but I'm saying they tend to be very protective, right? Protective of their roles, protective of their power sometimes. So have you noticed any particular challenge for you to drive the same level of trust with your executive team, with your people, or you think the organization was already well designed or aligned around very high level of trust? Because sometimes, our personal approach about trust is different than what the organization are used to work, right? Or used to be as a collective team of people.
Yeah, that's a good one. Although I lead with trust, I recognize that not everybody else does. And
Yeah,
and that's okay. I mean, I'm like they said, I was like on the 99th percentile of that. And 99 sounds good. It's not necessarily good, right? I mean, there's some good elements to leading with trust, and then there's some bad to it as well, just like every other personality characteristic that a person can have. So I realize that although I may lead with trust, that a lot of my team may not initially trust me, and they don't know me, right? Like, so how and why would they trust me unless they're just wired the way that I am to offer it up first? So I think I've tried to take it upon myself to build that trust. I think trust within a management team is just one of the most, and on any team, not just a management team, but on a sports team or any team, is just amongst the most important things that you can have. Having a team that really trusts each other, that when somebody says they're going to do something, they'll do it. Trust each other that, they kind of got each other's back, and trust each other that if something's going on, they'll tell them to their face. And so I've been working hard to build that with our team. I think it's working, and I'll be definitely doing more of that in 2023 with just some more intentional kind of team building, trust building exercises that are usually facilitated. And so we'll be spending more and more time on that. My first year was that was a priority, but my main priority for the first year of this business was just to understand it. And that's why I had a chance to get out to 75 of our branches, building relationships with our leaders, our board, our shareholders, our analysts, just understanding the full cycle of how everything works as well. And now I'm by no means an expert yet, but I've got enough under my belt that I can switch gears a little bit in 2023. And our main gears that we're having in 2023 is continuing to build trust, rolling out a clear vision for the company with a clear set of values, some strategic planning around that, and continuing to build a culture of people first. So that's now that I've kind of know what I'm dealing with, that's what we're starting to push a little bit more. And I think all of those things build trust, whether it's with my direct team or other people in the company. The message that I've been trying to send is a lot of the words that I've used here today is that I think that building a company or building a culture within a company where people really like coming to work, where they they feel that they are trusted and respected, and that they trust and respect the company, that's good. And that's what I'm trying to build. And slowly we're putting in programs to show that. And I get feedback from our front lines that they feel it. So that's what we'll be continuing to do, I think, to build trust in our organization this year. It's a never ending journey. I remember in my previous role at Tundra, we thought about culture every day and talked about it every day. And because of that, I think we built a really, really wonderful culture that was envied by a lot. But it didn't just happen magically. It happened, but with a daily grind of thinking about it and making little tweaks so that it can be as good as it can be.
Yeah, wonderful. And I suppose the fact that you are spending a lot of time visiting the branches, going around, I think is really helping you not only to show up as a leader, but also to instill probably the level of trust with others. So I think it's a wonderful, not just a strategy, I think it's just a wonderful way of leading, and not isolating yourself in the office, because that's one of the problems many CEOs unfortunately do. They tend to get isolated in their own office and dealing with important stuff, but forgetting about, talking, communicating with the front line, with other people. It sounds like you are actually spending a lot of time there, which is great. Now, from your personal, I mean, you mentioned multiple stakeholders, so you have more conversation maybe than before with people and trying to find a way to get everyone aligned. I think one great expression I got from actually a CEO that I interviewed a few weeks ago, he said that one of the major real job of a CEO is connecting all the dots that are happening in the organization. And I think that is really, really underrated by many. Connecting things that are happening without necessarily having full control of what's going on, or the expertise, the experience to shape that specific conversation, but just being able to connect in things. And I think many people don't understand that about CEOs. They think the CEOs, they just need to make a decision on everything because that's at the end of the day what matters. And the reality is letting conversation get to a point where people get committed and take action. Is that right? That's your approach in managing multiple stakeholders at the same time, especially when there is no consensus, when there are different standpoints. Is that right?
Yeah, I've always found that I've tried to be a consensus leader. If you talk to the teams that I've worked with, they'll probably tell you I seek consensus, sometimes to a fault.
Okay.
And that sometimes, I've had people like my chief operating officer who I've worked with for a long time. He's told me before. He says, you know what? Sometimes you don't need to take us along on the journey. Like, we trust you. So sometimes just say, this is where we're going. This is why we're going there. And I need you to come along, and we will, and it'll be fine. And so I've found that I've kind of tried to do consensus, sometimes to a fault. And now it's definitely harder. Sometimes there's just diametrically opposed views on something, and they're not changing. And so the way that I've approached that is I always start off with, I would prefer to have consensus. If we can find a solution that works for everyone, let's do that. If you can't amongst yourselves, then my job in this role is to be the tiebreaker. And I'll make a decision with all the information. I'll tell you why I made it, and then once that decision's made, we really need to have everybody on the same page. Like, whether you agreed with it or not in the first place, once we've decided that this is what we're doing, I need everyone to walk out of that room and say, this is what we're doing, and I support it. Just because it's one of the most destructive things in organizations that I've seen is, you walk out of a room, you made a decision, one or two people didn't agree with it, and then the verbiage around it from them is, this is what we're doing, but I didn't support that. I think it's a wrong thing to do. That can be quite destructive, I found, in a culture. So we try to frame it in such a way that, even if you didn't agree with it, you now support it. So that's been a helpful way of thinking about the decision-making process. But as you say, there's connecting all the dots is that's definitely a big part of the job, and there's a lot of dots to connect in this company, more dots than I previously had. But what I find really nice in a new role is that I didn't come with any of the previous baggage from my previous role. And maybe baggage is the wrong word, but I'll just give you an example. In my previous role, when we signed the lease for our building, our main building, I did that a decade prior when we were a much smaller company. It would have been a totally normal thing for me to do. And I just kept the relationship with the landlord. So anytime something came up around the building, I said, well, I just got the relationship. I don't mind calling them. I'll deal with it. And there was 100 things like that. And so there was just legacy things that, because of certain relationships, I would end up doing. And I think every leader in the world has this. And now I've come into this new role where I don't have any legacy anything. And we also have more support. And a really interesting quote or phrase that I heard from my predecessor, just a wonderful, super experienced, super talented leader by the name of Mark Foote. He said, the bigger company you lead, the easier it is. And I said, I don't believe you. I don't believe you, Mark. But as I got into this role, I understand what he means. And I think back to my days at Tundra, 150-person company. If there was a major tax issue or a major legal issue, I was involved. As an example, tax or legal, of course I would be involved. Now at Wajax, we have a director of tax and we have a chief of legal. And so when there's a tax issue, they do it, and I don't need to do it. And when there's a legal issue, they do it, and I don't need to do it. And so because of that, just as you get larger, there's a little bit more experts. You don't have to stress out about trying to be the lead on something that you don't understand in the first place that well. And you can really focus on the things that only you can do. And so as I came into this role, one, less or no legacy baggage, and two, more experts to do things, which actually really does allow me to focus on the things that I should be doing. And when I finish most days and I look at my calendar and I think, was I working on things that I actually should be doing, or am I getting pulled into things that I shouldn't be doing? Almost every day I look back at my calendars and I say, I was doing things that I should be doing today. I was doing things that
Nice.
only I can do. And so that's been a pretty good feeling at the end of the day, if you can say that.
Wonderful. I love this approach, and actually lead me as well to the next question is, how did you change your habits, your way of leading your day, your personal life, with a new challenge? Because, sometimes when we face completely new challenge, and to some extent, you are facing a new challenge anyway, right? It's not just in your organization, but also the size of the organization, the challenges, the stakeholders. How did you adapt personally to the new change? In other words, did you change anything, or you kept doing what you were doing before? You gave us, some example about how you're managing the calendar, but in terms of what else is happening, behind the scene, how did you change about it?
So I think the biggest personal change was kind of around the personal and family area. I mean, whether I was running Tundra or Wajax, there's kind of a chunk of time in the day where I do all the work things. And while the tasks are a little bit different, it's still those are the work things. When I think of the personal things, I travel a lot more now. So I live in Calgary, Alberta, which is in Western Canada, and we had 4 branches, all that I could drive to all of them. I could be there and back in the same day, or maybe a one night overnight. And now I still live in Calgary, but our head office is just outside of Toronto, which is about a 4-hour flight. And then we have these 100+ branches across the country, which I like to get out to. So I travel a lot more, and that is a fundamental difference in your personal and family life. So before I took this job, my family and I, we talked about it a lot, and we made, some pacts about things that we would do and wouldn't do. And one of the things that we agreed to was that, they'll know my travel schedule a long time in advance. And if they need to do stuff kind of on their own, plan it on those days when I'm gone. And when I'm here, let's really be intentional about being together. Let's try to limit the number of nights where everyone's on their electronic devices, and really focus on maybe playing a board game, or if we're going to do something electronics, like let's all cuddle up on the couch together with our dog and watch a movie and order in pizza, and have a family night. And so I've actually found that the family time that we have together, even though it's a little bit less than it was before, it's much more intentional. So it feels like it's more, even though I'm home less. So I think that's been a big thing. And then just making sure that I'm keeping up with like physical health. I like to run and go to the gym, kind of do those kind of things, and making sure that I'm making time for that, which I am, and that feels good. And I do it on the road too. I kind of build that into my schedule in the morning. So if whatever hotels I'm going to, I make sure that they have a gym that's open 24/7, and
Yes.
that I can get to it early in the morning. So but it's been good. But that's been kind of, I think, the major personal change, just around family and managing it. Because I mean, it's a cool opportunity. I'm thrilled to be doing it, but there is no opportunity that's cool or interesting enough in the world to destroy your family over. And I've seen it happen where people take on really busy, tons of travel roles, and their family really suffers. And I wasn't prepared to do that.
Well, how many times, right? We heard leaders say, maybe when they get to their 60s or 70s, I regret not having spent enough time with my family. How many times we heard that? So I think your approach is just wonderful, and I love what you said in terms of being very intentional with the time spent with the family, and that's really, for me, it's a wonderful advice for actually those people that are in the audience today. Maybe they're struggling with that. I was actually listening to a few months back to an interview of the CEO of a major automotive company, and he said, I regret not having spent time with my family. When I was with them, I wasn't there at all. I was thinking about the struggles, the challenges I have in the business. So I think what you just shared is a wonderful advice for everyone. Maybe the last question related to this before we end with the final Q&As, Iggy, is on the business level. You mentioned already some changes in terms of, you're traveling more now. You need to talk more, to spend more time with the people on the front line. You spend more time with the stakeholders. Is there anything else, maybe one other thing that you changed as a leader, as a CEO in the last year, that something that you weren't doing before? Is there something else?
There's something different. I mean, it's a different team, a completely different team. So everyone is new to me on this management team. So I think just trying to get to, in my previous role, I kind of knew everyone. I'd worked with many of them for a decade plus. So it was, we had a better rhythm going. And so I think really just establishing that rhythm, getting to know them as people a little bit more. I find I'm spending more of my time just learning about them and about their business and about what they do in the business, as opposed to just moving the ball forward as I was doing in my previous role. So I think that's a little bit different. And I'm also in a different city. So there is an inherent challenge that I live in Calgary and I'm in Toronto. And so the way that we manage our schedule, which I think has worked quite well, is I give our direct team my schedule 3 months in advance. And I say, those are the days that I'll be in Toronto, which is often. I'm there every second week for a few days. And I say, let's make those days our together days. Like, try not to book too many outside meetings, try to leave the calendar flexible, leave your door open. And let's do all of our collaborating and working together in person in Toronto. And then when I'm not there, I'm flexible. Like, we have one of our senior leaders, he's got a place in North Carolina. I'm like, when you're doing your stuff where you're just focus work on your computer and it's only you and you don't need other people, I don't care where you do that. So I think really giving them that flexibility has been something that's been new to me. And this Wajax company, it was doing remote work and online meetings way before the pandemic, just because of the distributed nature of the business. So that's been new to me, but I like it and it works for this team and it works for me. So it's been kind of leading more remotely has been a new thing for me, but it's not just because of the pandemic. It's because of the nature of this company and how it's been even before COVID.
Wonderful. Great. All right, Iggy. So final question. So to understand a little bit more about you as your personality, probably. So what is one thing that, for a very quick answer, one thing that you learn across your career? If you think to only one thing that has been the major learning opportunity for you.
I think it's about people. And when you're young, you're dumb. and you're just less self-aware and you're less aware of others. And so I think the one lesson that I've learned, not over my career, but of my life, is that everybody is going through some massive internal battle that you really don't know anything about, and maybe will never know anything about. And so I think that just appreciating that and trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, sometimes people do things that seem totally crazy and stupid, but they're not crazy and stupid to them. And so trying to put yourself in their shoes and understand why they would have made that decision and seek to understand more than, just dictate and tell, I think has been the biggest lesson that I've learned. That is, it's helped me understand things better and I think be a better leader.
Yeah, putting yourself in other people's shoes and see and try to understand what they see in their own world, right? So I love this. Yep. On the other hand, is there anything that you would have maybe done differently in your career?
I think it's related to the previous question. I think I would have been softer in certain things, and really I should have tried to understand the other person's situation. But when you're younger and you're aggressive in your career, you kind of rule a little bit harder with an iron fist, and that so I had some moments in my career where I thought I needed to be harder, and I did, and it wasn't in my character, but I did it and I kind of forced it through, and I would probably relive those a little bit differently.
Wonderful. Well, that's great self-reflection, by the way. Wonderful. All right, final question, Iggy, is what is your approach to learning? I mean, you said before learning has been always very important for you, also from a personal development standpoint. But if I'm thinking about reading, for example, is there any book that made a huge difference? And by the way, do you love reading books? So it's something that you do. If you do, is there anything that really made a difference or made an impact maybe in your personal life?
Yeah, that's I do like reading. So I read a lot of books. I read the newspaper. I have a couple of blogs that I'm interested in, and a couple of podcasts that I like. And then I like courses as well. So I'm enrolled in a couple of courses right now related to being a board director.
Okay.
So I always love learning, whether it's kind of a formal classroom style or more just reading on my own. There's lots out there. I think one of my favorite books is called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker, and it's all about trying to be happy first and figuring out how to do that, and then success will come, not the other way around. Happiness never comes from success. It's usually the other way around. But then the trick is, okay, well, if I'm not happy and I'm not successful, how do I become happy so that I can become successful? And that's what the book talks about.
Yeah, it's a great book, by the way. Fantastic suggestion. We'll put in the show notes. Wonderful, Iggy. Really, I love our conversation. Where people should go if they want to find out more about you and your company?
LinkedIn is the best spot.
Wonderful. And we'll put, your link on the show notes. Iggy, thank you so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it so much. And again, thank you also for being very open, transparent about you, your journey, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.